search the violence on Google, the definitions associated with the action or fact employing physical force or more intimidation against someone. If this work will go deeper into the subject, knowing the principle of the causes and who has effect on society. In addition, at the end of the work, will be possible recognize the differences and types of violence in general, how to prevent it.
Geovanna 4656. What is violence? Violence is an act of physical force that causes or is intended to cause harm. The harm inflicted by violence can be physical, psychological, or both. Violence can be distinguished for aggression, a more general type of hostile behavior that can be physical, verbal, or passive in nature. Violence is a relatively common type of human behavior that occurs around the world. People of any age can be violent, although older teens and young adults are more likely to engage in violent behavior. Violence has a number of negative effects to those who witness or experience it, and children are especially susceptible to its harm. There are several methods of categorizing violent behavior, one of which involves distinguishing between predatory and affective violence. Predatory violence involves planned actions of hostile force. Affective violence is more impulsive and unplanned. Other types of violence have been suggested, including irritable violence motivated by frustration and territorial violence motivated by intrusion into their territory or perceived space.
Samara 3855. Causes. Violence is multi-causal. That is, there's not just a single factor that leads to this behavior. Instead, violence is the result of several factors. Researchers have examined several factors with a person that can contribute to violence, including generic predisposition, neurochemical abnormalities, e.g. high testosterone levels, personality characteristics, information processing deficits, for example, the tendency to view the actions of others as hostile, experience of abuse or neglect as a child.
Sarah 4379.
Effects of violence. Regardless of this cause, violence has a negative impact on those who experience or witness it. Violence can cause physical injuries and psychological damage, among them the most common are post-traumatic stress disorder, dissociative identity disorder, borderline personality disorder, depression, anxiety, bipolar disorder, and children in particular are the most susceptible to these effects, and exposure to violence can increase their violent behavior.
I'm Suzana, 4384. The different types of violence arise according to how they manifest themselves, from the use of physical force or power over oneself, the person or group. The types of violence can be classified as physical, psychological, and moral, sexual, economic, and patrimonial, social, and domestic violence. There is also violence against women and children, which encompasses above. Now I'm gonna talk specifically about each of them. Physical violence is the use of physical force on someone. Slapping, punching, kicking, pulling, pushing, or use any effect with the purpose of, through physical force, oppressing, injuring, or causing any kind of physical damage. Psychological and moral violence. Uses offensive words or humiliation, exposure, name-calling, or oppression submission cause the victim to use physical force. Economic or patrimonial violence. When there is rotation, subtraction, partial, or destruction of objects, personal documents, assets, values and rights or economic resources, including resources to satisfy their needs. Thefts, robberies, subtractions, or impediments can be characterized as this type of violence.
Social violence occurs due to the use of force by one social group over another. Discrimination, prejudice, disrespect for difference, intolerance, or submission of a group is understood as social violence. Sexual violence occurs when the action the violence takes a sexual character. Harassment, abuse, and rape are considered acts of sexual violence. This case occurs when there is not consent and with victim unable to oppose the act. Domestic violence occurs if the family nucleus, paterns, relatives, or guardians can cause it. If this classification cause of violence against women and children predomination.
Samara 3855. Violence against women. It can occur within conjugal relationships, legal marriage, or intimate relationship, and the types and punishment for aggressors are provided from in the Maria da Penha law. Most cases of violence against women cover all the forms of violence mentioned above. Acts of this form of violence can be caused by people you know or strangers, on the streets, in work environments, in social areas. Violence against children occurs inside or outside the home after physical punishment is imposed on the child. Other forms of violence stem from intimidation and persuasion. As for violence against women, there is also a law for violence against children, the spanking law, based on which offenders can be punished in different ways. The case of parents and legal guardians, as the punishments can even reach the loss of custody of the youth. Other forms of violence against children are bullying and cyberbullying, where children are humiliated at school, on or social networks.
Sarah 4379. Prevention of violence. As the tendency to behave violently develops during childhood, most prevention programs target young people. Many of these programs are school-based, although some involve the family or the community. There are also therapies with psychologists and including drugs such as antidepressants, beta blockers, or benzodiazepines can be used in addition to the other methods. Conclusion. In view of what was mentioned, we conclude that violence is the acting of causing harm to someone, not only physically, but also psychologically. We present its cause, its effects, its types, and its prevention.